They called me Sweet Miss Clara in the listing, said I was a gentle retired widow who lived by the river and rarely got in the way. Like I was a ghost, like I wasn't supposed to notice, but they forgot something. This sweet widow used to teach literature to 30 restless teenagers 5 days a week for 40 years. I once stared down a 7th grader who brought a live raccoon to school in his backpack. I have held funerals, fought through grief, mended bones and broken hearts. I can tell when something's wrong by the way a single floorboard creaks, so when they tried to rent out my life behind my back, thinking I'd never find out, well, they were about to learn what a real storm looks like. Before I begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not the only one, and if what I say touches something in you, hit that subscribe button. It helps more people understand what elder betrayal really looks like. Now let me tell you what happened. My name is Clara Monroe, I'm 70 years old, and until a few months ago, I thought I had found a kind of peace that most people only write about in journals they never finish. I live alone in a quiet little cottage just outside Coldbrook, Vermont. You'd miss it if you blinked. A winding dirt road, a white picket fence with chipping paint, and a stretch of river you can hear before you see. My husband, Jonathan, built that house for us when we were newlyweds. He passed 6 years ago. Lung cancer. It came hard and fast like a summer storm, and when it was over I was alone. Just me and the house he left behind. But it wasn't loneliness I lived in. It was solitude. There's a difference. I had my routines, mornings with coffee on the porch swing, Thursdays at the community library, Saturdays with the River Song Ladies Circle, where we sang old hymns and traded casserole recipes. I kept a garden out back, grew tomatoes so sweet they almost tasted like candy, and I knit hats for the neonatal unit every winter. I wasn't rich, but my needs were small, and I had the one thing most people never really value until it's gone: quiet. Then came Sabrina, my daughter, my only child, a beautiful, brilliant whirlwind of a woman who somehow always seemed just a few steps ahead of a crisis she had no business creating in the first place. Sabrina's 39. She lives 2 towns over with her husband Dean, a man with the soul of an expensive couch, pleasant to look at, expensive to maintain, and almost entirely useless in a pinch. They're always launching something: a skincare line, a podcast, an artisanal dog treat delivery box. And they're always broke. Mama, she'd sigh over speakerphone, you wouldn't believe how tight things are right now. I would listen, I always did. A mother's love doesn't vanish just because she knows better. So when Sabrina dropped by one Tuesday afternoon with her giant sunglasses and too much perfume, I wasn't surprised. But this time, she didn't come to vent. She came with a request. Mama, she said, in that syrupy voice she uses when she's trying to sound humble. I know you've got your book club this weekend, down in Middlebury, and Dean has this contractor guy who wants to see a rustic property for a photo shoot. It's just a few hours. Would it be okay if we used the cottage, just while you're out? Saves him the drive. It was odd, but not outrageous. Well, I suppose, I said slowly, but you'll need the key. It's in the green teacup on the second shelf. She lit up like a Christmas window display. Perfect. You're the best, Mama. Seriously, just this once. Just this once. I remember watching her drive away from the porch. She didn't wave. Her SUV kicked up dust and vanished around the bend. I stood there a while longer, a strange tightness in my chest I couldn't name. I should have listened to that feeling. I should have asked more questions, but I didn't. Because I loved her. Because I wanted to believe the best. Because sometimes we lie to ourselves in the name of love. That's when it all began. A slow unraveling of peace, one invisible thread at a time. It started with a candle. I never buy scented candles, they give me headaches. But when I returned home from Middlebury that Sunday evening, the whole living room smelled like sea salt and coconut. I brushed it off, thinking Sabrina had just lit something before she left. But then came the second thing. The thermostat had been turned up to 74. I keep it steady at 68 in the spring. The third thing? A lipstick-stained champagne flute in my sink. I haven't worn lipstick in 5 years. At first I thought I was slipping. Maybe I did drink from that glass. Maybe I bumped the thermostat. Maybe the smell was from the guest soap. I even wrote it down, like I was tracking my own mind. But the unease didn't go away. And then Mrs. Dellingham happened. She's my neighbor. 82. Hard of hearing but sharper than a tack when it comes to neighborhood gossip. She stopped me on my way to the post box one morning, wearing that big floppy straw hat of hers. "My word, Clara," she said, squinting over her glasses, "your niece is just lovely. Met her and her boyfriend yesterday. They were leaving your house with yoga mats and backpacks. Told me they were heading to Burlington for a sunrise hike." I blinked. "Niece?" I repeated, my voice a whisper. She nodded, cheerful and oblivious. I smiled and said nothing. But inside me, something very old and very cold clicked into place, like the final piece of a key turning in a lock. Something was wrong, and I was done pretending not to see it. It's strange how something so small, a key, can become the hinge on which your entire world turns. After Mrs. Dellingham's comment, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, just staring at the chipped green teacup on the shelf. The one I'd told Sabrina held the spare. It sat empty now, innocent looking, harmless, but I knew better. I knew what it meant. That key had always been a symbol of trust. I gave it to Jonathan when we first moved into this place. I gave it to my friend June when I went to the hospital for my knee. I never gave it away lightly, so when Sabrina asked for it, just this once, I believed her, foolishly. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I told myself I needed proof, not feelings. Proof. So I began watching, quietly. The next weekend, I told Sabrina I'd be visiting my cousin in Montpelier. I said it over the phone, casually. She didn't ask many questions, just said, "Oh, that's great, Mama," and hung up a little too fast. But I didn't go to Montpelier. I stayed. I parked my car at the far end of town, and took a cab home, arriving just before noon on a sunny Saturday. I didn't go inside. I hid. Yes, at 70 years old, I crouched behind my own hydrangea bushes with a pair of binoculars I used for birdwatching. Ridiculous, perhaps, but I needed to see for myself. And sure enough, around 1:45, a blue sedan pulled into my driveway. A young couple got out, she in leggings and oversized sunglasses, he with a camera bag and a tripod. They looked around, laughing, pointing at the ivy on my walls, like it was part of a movie set. The woman pulled out her phone and typed something. A moment later, my front door swung open. I didn't breathe, not once. They were inside for hours. Around 6, I saw flickering light through the windows. Candles, maybe. Or one of those ridiculous ring lights influencers carry around like gospel. At 7:30, they came out again, hand in hand, as if they'd just finished a romantic weekend away. They took selfies on my porch. They kissed by my lilac tree. Then they drove off. My house, my home, had been a prop in someone's curated fairy tale, and I hadn't even been invited. Later that night, I called Sabrina. "Hey Mama," she answered, her voice a little too bright. "How was Montpelier?" "Oh, peaceful," I said smoothly. The weather was nice, quiet, no strangers. A pause, just a breath. "Glad to hear it." She didn't ask anything else, and I didn't push, not yet. Instead, the next day, I did what any half-suspicious widow would do. I called my niece, Lydia, who teaches digital marketing at the local community college. "Sweetheart," I asked gently, "can you show me how to look up vacation rentals on the internet?" She was delighted to help, set me up with an account, taught me how to search by map. I played dumb, but I was sharp, sharper than Sabrina thought. That night, once I was alone, I typed in the name of my town. Scroll, scroll, nothing. Then, there it was. Riverside Rustic Hideaway. A perfect escape. The photos hit me like a blow. My kitchen, my fireplace, my bed. The listing even included a shot of my reading chair, captioned, "Vintage charm, ideal for unplugging." But what gutted me most was the host description. Owned by a kind elderly woman who spends most weekends away with family. You'll have the place to yourself. I wasn't a person. I was a feature, a selling point. And that was the moment the storm began to form. Low in my chest, quiet, gathering. I wasn't just going to confront her, I was going to outsmart her. It's a strange kind of grief, realizing your safe place isn't yours anymore. After I found the listing, something shifted inside me. The cottage stopped feeling like home, and started feeling watched, touched, like someone had left fingerprints all over my memories. I started seeing evidence everywhere, not dramatic things, subtle things, insidious. A teacup in the sink that didn't match any of my sets, a pink scrunchie on the bathroom counter, glitter on the floor, glitter, for heaven's sake. It clung to the grout like shame. One morning, I opened the fridge and found a half-used bottle of almond milk. I don't drink almond milk, never have, never will, but someone did, in my kitchen, while I slept in another room, or while I was away, trusting. The worst came the following Saturday. I always leave early to volunteer at the town food pantry. When I came back mid-afternoon, something felt off. The air was too warm. The curtains were drawn differently. I walked into the guest room and froze. The bed had been made, but not by me. I folded the corners under twice, military style. Whoever had done it had left it loose, the kind of half-hearted tuck you see in hotel rooms. There was a faint trace of perfume in the air, not mine, something floral and cloying, like gardenia, drowned in sugar. I turned to the dresser. My husband's old fishing photo had been moved, just a few inches to the left. Not enough to be obvious, just enough for me to feel it in my bones. I sat down on the bed. My knees ached, my throat burned. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was a slow leak, a quiet wound that kept bleeding. And still I didn't call Sabrina, not yet. I needed to know the full extent of what she'd done. So I created a fake Getaway Nest account, under the name Maggie Rowe. Used an email Lydia helped me set up. I sent a message to the listing, asking about weekend availability, just to see how she'd respond. Within an hour, a chipper message popped up. Hi Maggie, thanks for your interest. Yes, we're open this month and next. Feel free to book. It's a magical little escape. You'll love it here. She'd said we, her and Dean. Suddenly I remembered all the small comments. Oh mama, you don't even use that room. You don't need such a big place, not at your age. All that space, just sitting there. It had never been about helping a contractor, that was the bait. The real plan had been in motion for weeks, maybe months. They weren't just using my home, they were monetizing me. The next day, I stopped by the church early and waited for Pastor Elena Grant to arrive. She's not just my choir director, she's a friend, someone who still calls me Firecracker. From the time I argued with a city official about the potholes on Main Street. Elena, I said, voice low, I need a moment. She listened, no interruptions, no wide eyes or gasps, just quiet, righteous understanding. When I showed her the listing on my phone, she scrolled slowly, her lips pressed into a firm line. Oh Clara, she said, this is war. I nodded, and I have an idea. She leaned in, do tell. I told her everything, my plan, my logic, my timeline. When I finished, she smiled, not kindly, sharply. We'll need a cover story, she said, and a van. I can get both, I replied. My daughter thought she'd turned my sanctuary into a business. Fine, I would run it better. They wanted to treat my home like a business. Fine, I was about to show them how a real businesswoman runs her affairs, especially when she's got a choir full of accomplices. After my talk with Pastor Elena, we met again the next morning in the church basement. She brought along Sister Ruthie and Diane, two fellow altos who could keep a secret like a vault. We brewed strong coffee and huddled over my iPad like we were planning a heist. And in a way we were. We need a profile, Elena said. Something that looks real, but can't be traced. I nodded. Already made one. Maggie Rowe. Her hobbies include yoga, essential oils, and quiet spiritual retreats. Diane laughed into her coffee. Spiritual, huh? Then we better bring hymnals. We mapped out the weekends. According to Sabrina's listing, the cottage was available every Friday through Sunday for the next 3 months. That was a lot of open space. Clearly, they were hoping to build momentum. Let's fill every slot, I said. If they want guests, they'll get guests. We pooled a modest donation from the choir fund, just enough to book several weekends without raising flags. I bought a prepaid card from the pharmacy, using cash and a fake name. The cashier barely looked at me, too busy scrolling on her phone, which was fine. Let them underestimate the old woman in line. That evening, Elena and I sat at my dining table and started booking, one weekend, then the next, then another. Each reservation under Maggie Rowe, each note the same. Looking forward to a peaceful weekend of reflection and soft song with a few fellow travelers. We're a quiet bunch. Thank you so much for hosting. I could almost see Sabrina smiling smugly with each email notification, thinking she'd hit a jackpot. By the time we were done, she was booked solid. Not one weekend left untouched. That's when we made phase 2. We wouldn't just book the cottage, we'd arrive. The plan was simple. Each Friday, a group from the choir would check in posing as Maggie and the retreat guests. We'd rotate members each weekend so no faces repeated. They'd bring casseroles, crockpots, thermoses of coffee. They'd rehearse for hours, just like we always did at church. Except now, it would be at full volume, with tambourines. You sure you want to go through with this? Ruthie asked that night as we practiced. I looked around at the women who had supported me through loss, aging, and the aching quiet of widowhood. They were laughing, helping fold linens for the retreat. Yes, I said firmly. I'm tired of being polite about being exploited, because that's what it was, exploitation. Not just of my home, but of my trust, my silence, my perceived fragility. They saw an old woman with a porch swing and soft eyes. They never saw the fire. And here's the thing about fire: when contained, it keeps you warm. But when it spreads, it teaches lessons. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to fight. I wanted them to learn, to sit in the discomfort of being exposed. The best revenge isn't rage, it's revelation, and I was about to light the match. The final touch was a printed welcome sign we taped to the inside of the front window. River Song Retreat Weekend. Please respect our right to joyful expression. It had a picture of a sunrise over water and two hands clasped in prayer. I imagined Sabrina reading that as the choir unpacked their guitars and baked city. They wanted my home to make them money. I would make it sing instead. The Friday of the first retreat dawned bright and unseasonably warm. The cottage looked almost smug in the morning light, as if it knew what was coming. By 2 p.m., I had baked 2 apple crumbles and set out folding chairs in the backyard. At 4:30, I moved my car to the church lot and walked back, just in case Sabrina tried to drive by and spot it. I didn't want her knowing I'd never left. The official check-in time was 5 p.m. At 4:58, a silver minivan pulled up, its side door sliding open with the sound of resolve. Out stepped Sister Ruthie, Deacon Will, and 4 more members of the choir, each carrying a duffel bag and a dish. Time to rehearse. Ruthie grinned. I nodded. Time to be seen. They entered through the front door like real guests, laughing and chatting just a little too loud. Will pulled out his guitar case. Deanne opened a cooler full of deviled eggs. They moved through the cottage like it was a beloved cousin's house, respectfully, but with comfortable authority. At 5:13, I heard a car approaching. Sabrina's black Audi SUV rolled up and parked halfway on the grass, like it always did when she was flustered. She stepped out, Dean trailing behind her with a clipboard. I watched from behind the living room curtain as she marched up the walkway, her fake smile plastered on like too much lipstick. Dean knocked. Ruthie answered. Hi there, Sabrina chirped, switching on her overly bright hostess voice. Just wanted to pop by and welcome you. I'm your host. Oh, bless your heart, Ruthie said, her voice syrupy sweet. We feel so welcomed already. What a lovely little spot. Sabrina blinked. We just wanted to make sure everything's to your liking. You'll be having a quiet weekend, yes. Deacon Will appeared beside Ruthie, guitar in hand. We sure will. Just a little fellowship, a little harmony, a little praise. Deanne stepped up, holding her casserole dish with pride, and a lot of lasagna. Dean looked like he wanted to say something, but thought better of it. Ruthie lowered her voice. just enough to sound confiding. We do tend to get a bit spirited when the spirit moves us. Nothing disruptive, just gospel. You know how it is. Sabrina's smile faltered. I see, she said tightly. They stood there for another awkward beat, before Ruthie gently shut the door. Inside, the group erupted in quiet laughter. We waited 10 minutes, just in case, and then the first note rang out. A slow, rich hum that built into the opening chords of Down by the Riverside. Ian slapped her tambourine. Will plucked strings. By the second verse, everyone was singing. Harmonies filled the walls. The windows shook slightly in their panes. I stood in the kitchen, watching the casserole bubble in the oven, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Joy. Not revenge. Not yet. Just joy. This wasn't noise. It was reclamation. Every echo of those voices pushed out the ghosts. Sabrina had let in the influencers, the wine glasses, the strangers who danced in my kitchen like they owned it. By 8 o'clock, the dining room was full. Chicken, biscuits, cornbread, 3 kinds of pie. They sat elbow to elbow, complimenting each other's cooking, and sharing old stories between songs. I stayed mostly quiet that night, letting them take up space, letting them drown out the lies with truth. When I went to bed, the music was still going, softer now, but steady, like a heartbeat, like home. Sabrina hadn't messaged me. She didn't call the next day either, but I knew she was seething, and that meant the plan was working. 1 weekend down, 7 more to go. By the second weekend, Sabrina and Dean tried to take back control. They showed up before the guests did, dressed in what I can only describe as passive-aggressive casual, coordinated khakis, matching clipboards, forced smiles like they were auditioning to host a daytime real estate show. Dean knocked. I opened the door. Mama, Sabrina said, voice tight, we're just doing a quick pre-check. Professionalism matters. Of course, I said, stepping aside with the grace of a woman hiding a secret army behind her curtains. They walked through the house like inspectors, opening drawers, straightening throw pillows, wiping a perfectly clean counter. Dean frowned at the casserole warming in the oven. Planning to cook again? He asked. Oh yes, I replied sweetly. The group is very into shared meals. Nourishing food. Good for the soul. Sabrina didn't respond. Her eyes swept the room like she was trying to spot the booby trap she could sense but not see. At exactly 5 o'clock, the front gate creaked open, and in came the weekend's guests. This time, it was a smaller group. 4 choir members, all women in their late 60s, dressed in flowing shawls and sensible boots. One of them carried a yoga mat, another, a crock pot. Sabrina stepped forward. Hi there, she said, slipping into her chirpy host voice. I'm your yes, chirped Joyce, a retired nurse with a voice like honey and a memory like a steel trap. We've read such lovely reviews, so peaceful, so private. Dean's jaw twitched. We do value quiet, Sabrina said carefully. You'll be meditating, right? Oh yes, said Gwen, with a wink. Deep, rhythmic breathing, with tambourines. Sabrina paled. Enjoy your stay, she said, through clenched teeth. They left in a cloud of frustration, tires kicking up gravel. Inside, the second act began. That night's rehearsal featured Go Tell It on the Mountain, a crowd favorite. Gwen, who used to be a soprano soloist in Boston, hit notes that shook the window panes. Joyce had brought sweet potato pie that made grown men weep. We practiced late, not out of spite, out of joy. But I knew every chord was slowly unraveling the neat little scheme Sabrina thought would go undetected, and I wasn't the only one enjoying it. Neighbors began to linger by the fence during practice. Mrs. Dellingham brought folding chairs and invited 2 of her bridge friends. They clapped after each song. One young couple even brought lemonade and asked if they could sit just to hear the harmonies. By the 3rd weekend, the cottage had become the town's most wholesome spectacle, and Sabrina, she stopped showing up in person. But I know she was watching. She emailed Maggie Rowe through the booking platform after our 3rd retreat. Just a reminder that this is a quiet residential property. Please respect our noise policy. I replied. Of course, all sounds are spirit-led and restorative. Thank you again for your beautiful space. We're so blessed to be here. Pastor Elena nearly fell off the piano bench laughing when I showed her. This is divine mischief, she said. Holy troublemaking. I approve. Each weekend, we got more organized. The schedule ran like clockwork. Meals were prepped, rotations made, music practiced. Every Friday was check-in, every Sunday was praise, and every Monday morning, the listing was still live, still hers, still booked, still perfectly legal. She could cancel, but she'd lose money. She could complain, but she'd have to admit what she'd done. So she did nothing. And while she did nothing, we sang. My house, once used in secret for strangers, had become a stage for truth. And we were just warming up. By the fourth weekend, the cottage practically hummed with purpose. What was once a quiet, stolen secret had become something bold and holy. Every wall echoed with voices, every corner smelled of cinnamon, lemon oil, and righteous momentum. Sabrina was unraveling. She sent a message to Maggie Rowe on Tuesday. We've had some unexpected neighborhood feedback. If you'd be open to shortening your stay or switching to weekdays, I can offer a discount. Translation: Please stop bringing a choir into the house. I'm illegally renting. I replied, thank you for your generous offer. Unfortunately, our spiritual work is rooted in weekends. We feel so connected to this space, and are grateful for your continued hospitality. Elena read it aloud at rehearsal, and nearly dropped her clipboard. She's stuck, she said. She can't shut us down without exposing herself. And that was the truth of it. Every note we sang wasn't just for joy, it was a reminder, a message, a melody of boundaries being rewritten. She had expected me to be quiet. I chose volume. Dean finally broke. He showed up at the front door, unannounced, the following Friday. I answered with a warm smile, and a towel over my shoulder. Can I help you? I asked, knowing full well what he'd say. He shifted uncomfortably. Clara, look, this whole thing has gotten complicated. We didn't mean any harm. It was just supposed to be some harmless income while you were gone. I leaned on the doorframe, keeping my voice steady. I was never gone, Dean. You just didn't look hard enough. He sighed, eyes darting toward the house, where the choir was setting up another folding table. We'll shut it down, okay? You've made your point. Just, maybe call off the hymn parade. I raised an eyebrow. This isn't a parade, it's a retreat. That's what the listing promises, and we've honored it. Respectfully, legally, joyfully. He said nothing, just looked defeated. A man not used to being bested, especially not by a widow with a bundt cake and a backbone. I closed the door gently. Then, on Saturday evening, we gave them the finale. We brought everyone, all 28 choir members, 3 casserole dishes, a pot of sweet tea, and even 2 of the neighbor ladies, who had asked to just see what it was all about. We set up in the backyard, under string lights and folding chairs, right where Sabrina had taken those pretty listing photos of the garden. We weren't hiding anymore. We were home. The song was This Little Light of Mine, and we did not let it hide. Our harmonies rose like a tide, smooth and strong. People came out of their houses, and stood at their fences. Some clapped, some swayed. Even the cranky man down the road, who'd once called the police on teenagers for loitering, gave us a thumbs up. And at the very back of the crowd, I saw her. Sabrina, arms folded, lips tight, standing next to Dean. She didn't interrupt. She didn't storm in. She just watched. Watched me lead a call and response, with 30 voices behind me. Watched me reclaim what she tried to reduce. Watched a woman she thought of as out of the way, become the center of something unshakable. The final verse faded into laughter and applause. And that night, I slept with the windows open. The next morning, I woke up to a new notification. Your reservation has been canceled. This listing is no longer active. And beneath it, a message from Sabrina. We need to talk. I smiled. For the first time in months, it was easy. The kind of smile that comes from victory earned, not through cruelty, but through clarity. She had heard the song. Now she was ready for the lesson. Sabrina arrived on Monday. No call, no warning, just the crunch of tires on gravel and the slam of her car door like punctuation on a tantrum. I was on the porch, trimming dead petals from the dahlias. I didn't look up. She stood at the bottom of the steps, arms crossed, chin tilted slightly, like she was deciding whether to cry or yell. "You win," she said. I snipped a wilted bloom and dropped it into the basket. This wasn't a game. Sabrina sighed and climbed the stairs, slower than usual, like the porch had aged her. "We've taken the listing down," she said. "Okay, it's over." I looked at her then. Really looked. She wasn't smug anymore. She wasn't even angry. She looked tired and cornered. "Good," I said softly. "And now we talk." She sat stiffly in the rocking chair Jonathan built. Her eyes darted to the garden, the bird feeder, anywhere but my face. "I didn't mean for it to be so disrespectful," she mumbled. I didn't speak, just let the silence settle like dust. She shifted. "It was Dean's idea originally. He said we could make a little extra. Said you wouldn't mind if you didn't notice. You're always at church, or the library, or," she trailed off, "or irrelevant." I offered. "No," she said quickly, "not irrelevant. Just, you like quiet." "We thought wrong," I cut in, gentle but firm. "You didn't ask, you assumed. You used my home without consent, and you put words in my mouth on a public platform. That's not just a mistake. That's a betrayal." She closed her eyes. "I know." I poured us both some iced tea and handed her a glass. She took it like it weighed more than it did. "I never imagined you'd retaliate," she said, after a while. I chuckled. "I didn't retaliate," I responded. "There's a difference. You turned my sanctuary into a business. So I showed you what kind of business it really was." She nodded slowly, sipping the tea. "They were good. The songs. I heard them from the street. That was the sound of my boundaries being re-established." She flinched, but said nothing. I leaned forward. "Now, here's what's going to happen. 1. I want the original key returned today." She pulled it from her purse and set it on the table. 2. The locks are being changed this Friday. From now on, you and Dean visit by invitation only. Not assumption, not convenience. She nodded again. And 3. You'll be attending church this Sunday. You'll sit in the front row. You'll hear Pastor Elena's sermon on honoring thy parents, and afterward, you'll apologize to me, to her, and to Mrs. Dellingham for lying about those family guests with the yoga mats. Sabrina's mouth opened, then closed again. "That's a lot." "So was being treated like an accessory in my own life," I replied, calm, but unyielding. After a long pause, she said, "Okay," and she meant it. Maybe not joyfully, maybe not with grace, but with recognition. Sometimes that's enough. That Sunday, she came, sat stiffly, in the front row, while Elena spoke about truth and reverence, and how love without respect is hollow. After the benediction, Sabrina shook hands with the choir, said her apologies, and even helped Sister Gwen carry folding chairs to the van. It wasn't a full redemption, but it was a start. Now, the cottage is quiet again, but not empty. It's filled with laughter on Wednesdays, when the choir visits for tea, with song, during our impromptu backyard harmonies, and with peace. Real peace. Last weekend, I sat on the porch, a quilt over my lap, a warm plate of apple cobbler beside me. Birds flitted near the feeder. The wind carried the faint sound of someone humming. This little light of mine. It was my house again, my story, and I had sung myself back into it, one note at a time.